Hey, everybody. I want to talk to you about how we dream the world and how the world dreams us. But to do that, I need to mention three important things about dreams. First of all, everything in my dream is me. I go to bed and I dream about somebody, but then I wake up and I'm the only one there. So that means everything I dreamed about must be inside of me. Second of all, the psychologist C.G. Jung said that dreams balance our one-sidedness. That means if I'm one-sided in one direction, the dream is going to show me something in myself that balances my one-sidedness. The third thing is dreams lead us towards our wholeness. So for many years, I used to dream that men were chasing me. Finally, one night, I dreamed that two men were chasing me, and each one was as big as a house. And I was running away, but this time, instead of running away, I turned around and said, "What do you want?" And they smiled and they said, "The professor sent us here to teach you about being a man." And I said, "Please teach me." And they did. Those men terrified me, but I needed them. And I got the message, and I never had that dream again. Now I'm going to tell you something that happened in waking life. I co-led a 6-year project in the Balkans that was funded by the United Nations. It was called Building Sustainable Community in the Aftermath of the War. And we worked with mixed groups of Serbs and Croats and Muslims on ethnic tension and war-related trauma. During my first visit, a group of 40 Serbs, Croats, and Bosnian Muslims said they didn't have any ethnic tension, although the war had just ended. They said, "But we're the humanitarians. We all like each other. We're not like those intolerant and mistrustful ones." But during the coffee break, the Serbs would go to coffee with the Serbs, the Croats with the Croats, the Bosnians with the Bosnians. On our third afternoon together, one woman had the courage to say, "I feel a bit more comfortable with people from my ethnic group." And all hell broke loose. "I knew I couldn't trust you." "Why not?" I asked. "Because her side did this to my sister." "Oh yeah? Well, your side did this to my brother." As they spoke, the tears started to flow. They started to listen to each other's suffering, to see each other's common humanity. That night, a spontaneous party emerged, with everybody drinking wine and singing each other's songs, songs they all knew from when they had shared a common country. We can refer to this post-war situation as a social dream. I'd like to ask you to stretch your imagination for a moment. Let's think of everything that happens in the world as both real and also dreamlike. Let's call the dreamlike aspects of social discourse and world events social dreams. So let's say that social dreams have the same three aspects as individual dreams, right? Everything in the social dream is part of us. The social dream balances our one-sidedness, and it leads us towards wholeness. Let's just stretch our imaginations. So the people in that forum in the Balkans identified as loving humanitarians, and they didn't acknowledge their divisions. They thought that intolerance and mistrust belonged to somebody else. But in a dream, everything's part of the dreamer. In other words, that mistrust was also present in the room. And in a way, their mistrust was needed as a balance to their one-sided insistence that everything was okay. When they voiced their mistrust, and were able to listen to one another, they began to find the togetherness they had hoped for. This social dream was not so different from my nighttime dream. In my dream, I was running away from something that terrified me, thinking that it could annihilate me. When I turned around and welcomed it as part of myself, it led me toward wholeness. This group of humanitarians was running from the intolerance and mistrust that threatened to annihilate them. Intolerance and mistrust had indeed ripped apart their communities. But when they found the courage to admit that these terrifying things were also inside of them, they opened themselves up to their wholeness and began to heal their fractured communities. Paying attention to what happens in the world and seeing it as a social dream helps us to learn from it and heal our society. When airplanes destroyed the Twin Towers, our nation did not realize that in addition to being real and terrifying, this tragedy was also a social dream. Most politicians and people in the country did not realize that everything in the dream is us. They saw the violence and the hatred as being outside of themselves, even as we started bombing Iraq and Afghanistan and killing people. When others mobilized to stop these wars, we also often forgot that everything in the dream is us. I remember a 20-year-old peace demonstrator standing on top of the barricade screaming, "F Bush, stop the violence!" with spit and hatred and vitriol spitting out of her mouth. Neither the politicians nor that young demonstrator woke up to the dreamlike aspect of the conflict. They continued to see the problem only on the outside and didn't wake up to the dream. So what does it mean to wake up to a dream? The point here is not to unconsciously become the thing that scares us or upsets us. Rather, if we recognize it in ourselves, we can transform it and use it. Let me give you an example. So I did a few dream sessions as part of the Social Dream Lab here at the museum, and thank you, Natalie and Michael, for letting me be a part of this visionary project. One woman worked on a dream from her childhood in which she was in a classroom, and suddenly an army came out of the blackboard and ran over the teacher and kept going. So I won't go into the details here, but in her dream work, she discovered to her surprise that that army was not attacking. She normally thinks of armies as violent and hostile, but this army energy was directive and passionate, moving in a straight line rather than attacking. This woman got so excited about that energy. She's a longtime social activist, but these days her life is pretty scattered. She told me she needs this directed energy in her life and in her activism. Interestingly, the army in the dream was coming out of the blackboard. In other words, this passionate directedness that the army represented in her dream was the lesson she needed to learn. To be clear, the lesson was not to be violent like she thinks an army would be. The lesson was to pick up the diamond essence of that terrifying thing. And this is what it means to wake up to a dream, to see the thing that terrifies or disturbs us as a part of ourselves, to transform it and use it wisely. Now imagine if George Bush could have looked in the mirror and seen that he was acting a bit like bin Laden, rather than being possessed by the hatred and violence that he saw in bin Laden. Imagine if that young demonstrator could have noticed she was acting a bit like Bush, rather than being possessed by the hatred and violence she saw in him. Imagine a world where we could harness the power of our opponent and use it wisely. A world where we could wake up to our personal and collective dreams rather than playing them out without awareness. Of course, your everyday mind must resist and reject what I'm saying. It's crazy, actually. There are just bad things that happen, and they're real. They're not dreams. And I agree with you totally. At the same time, I ask you to stretch your mind and your heart and imagine that we're dreaming the world. Everything we see on the news is also us. When we think it's only on the outside of us, we contribute to the one-sidedness that's at the core of many world problems. So stretch yourself again and imagine that this world also dreams us. It expresses itself through us. That woman in Croatia was playing out a role in the world's dream when she said she felt a bit more comfortable with people from her ethnic group. In a way, the world was using that woman's courage to help the group wake up to its pain and wake up to its capacity to heal. Like her, each one of us plays out a part in the world's dream, and the world needs us to play our part. The more we become who we really are and have the courage to express what's truly inside of us, the more the world can wake up. Let's wake up to our dreaming. When we're upset by the other side, let's remember, even though it's challenging to think this way, let's remember that the other side is balancing our one-sidedness and pointing us towards wholeness. Let's wake up to our dreaming, to our ugliness, to our beauty, and to our common humanity.